Opposite of a number, integer, riddle. Graph the number. Write the given letter above the point. The opposite of -3 is 3. The opposite of -7 is 7. The opposite of 8 is -8. The opposite of -1 is 1. The opposite of -6 is 6. The opposite of 10 is -10. The opposite of -9 is 9. The opposite of 5 is -5. The opposite of -10 is 10. The opposite of -2 is 2. The opposite of 4 is -4. The opposite of -5 is 5. The opposite of 2 is -2. The opposite of the sum of 4/10 and 5 6/10 is -6. 4/10 plus 5 6/10 equals 6, and the opposite of 6 is -6. The opposite of the difference of 6 8/10 and 3 8/10 is -3. When you find the difference of 6 8/10 and 3 8/10, you get 3, and the opposite of 3 is -3. The opposite of the sum of 3 3/10 and 4 7/10 is 8. When we add 3 3/10 and 4 7/10, we get 8. The opposite of 8 is -8, and the opposite of that is back to 8. Now it's time to plot our points. The first point we're going to plot is 3. So we start at 0 and we go over 3. 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be E. Now to help myself out, I'm actually going to plot these numbers down here: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I think this might help me when I'm marking my numbers. Maybe speed it up a little bit. Okay, so +3 is E, +7 is T, -8 is O, +1 is O, +6 is A, -10 is D, +9 is V, -5 is T, +10 is E, +2 is N, -4 is B, +5 is G, -2 is S, -6 is N, -3 is E, and +8 is I. So now we write down the letters from left to right: D, O, N, T, B, E, S, O, N, E, G, A, T, I, V, E. Don't be so negative. How clever. What did the negative number reply? The opposite of 4 is -4. The opposite of -2 is 2. The opposite of -9 is 9. The opposite of -7 is 7. The opposite of 6 is -6. The opposite of -8 is 8. The opposite of 3 is -3. The opposite of -5 is 5. The opposite of 5 is -5. The opposite of -4 is 4. The opposite of 0 is actually just 0. The opposite of -1 is 1. The opposite of the sum of 2 3/10 plus 5 4/10 plus 1 2/10 plus 1/10 is -9. When we add all of these values together, we get 9, and the opposite of 9 is -9. Now it's time to plot the points. So I'm going to mark off intervals of 2 here just so that way it makes it a little bit easier when I plot them. So I have -2, -4, -6, -8. All right, so -4 is M, 2, +2 is Y, +9 is H, +7 is T, -6 is V, 8 is C, -3 is E, +5 is A, -5 is E, +4 is M, 0 is T, 1 is M, and -9 is I. And we record our letters from left to right: I, V, E, M, E, T, M, Y, M, A, T, C, H. I've met my match. And what they're referring to here is if you have a positive and a negative, they attract. They've met their match. So very well done.